Guys, welcome to Leviathan, the newest edition, the 10th edition, you would say, of Warhammer 40,000, coming hot on the heels of, as you would probably say, 9th edition.
Danny.
Dickie, we're here today. We're putting on a how to play video. I would say based on the fact that most of the people who watch or listen to us don't actually know how to play the game. And we're going to teach you how to play adequately Warhammer 40,000. Before we begin, thanks to our friends at Games Workshop, who did provide us with a copy of the rules in advance so that we could produce just this amazing content for you. Obviously, you've already pre-ordered Leviathan, so we don't need to tell you to do that. But yeah, definitely do that. But let's move on to the turn.
So the command phase. At the start of command phase, before doing anything, both players gain 1 CP. Any other rules are resolved, such as Abaddon's War Master ability.
For returning players, leadership matters now. We have a new rule called Battle Shock. For new players, you missed a terrible rule called Morale. It literally did nothing. It made your models run away for no reason whatsoever. Be thankful that you're here for Battle Shock. In this step, for each unit on the battlefield that is below half strength, roll 2d6. If the result is greater than or equal to the best leadership characteristic tested, you pass. Hooray, great job, congratulations, you're so brave. However, if you fail the test until the start of your next command phase, that unit is battle shocked. And when a unit is battle shocked, bad things happen.
Well, the bad things, John, is your objective control characteristic turns to 0. We really haven't talked about the characteristics of models yet, but that's a bad thing.
That is.
Yeah. And also, if that unit falls back, it must make a desperate escape test for every model in that unit.
That is desperate.
And most importantly, I think, is you can't use stratagems on that effective unit at all.
You can use stratagems when you're shook.
No stratagems while shook.
The movement phase deals with moving your army, but let's start by selecting one of your units to move. A unit can make a normal move, it can advance, or it can stay still during the movement phase. Units within engagement range of an enemy can either remain stationary or fall back, if indeed you are a coward. I will say, if you fall back, there's a lot of stuff you can't do anymore because of the cowardice.
After you finish moving that unit, you can select a new unit to move.
That's right. That's how movement works. Like I said, there are 3 types of movement that you can do. One of them is remain stationary. None of the models in the unit move, and you stay in place like a coward. Unless, of course, you're in combat, in which case you're brave. You can also do what's called a normal move, where your models move up to their movement characteristic, which you can find on their data sheets. Or you couldn't do an advanced move. And that isn't just like a super technical move, that's just like you're running. So you move your movement plus d6. Units that advance, though, cannot shoot or charge, as they are too busy jogging on. There are cowardly moves you can do, right, Dickie?
The fallback move. A unit makes a fallback move, and it moves equal to its move characteristic. But you cannot move within engagement range of enemy models. If that's not possible, John, you cannot fall back.
No, sir. You can sometimes do a desperate escape, which is when you can move over enemy models when you're falling back, which you wouldn't usually do. It wouldn't usually let you. You got to make a desperate escape test, though. So every model in the unit, before you move, roll 1 dice. For each roll of 1 or 2, the model from that unit is destroyed, probably emotionally, most likely from cowardice.
Yeah, I was going to say cowardice.
Yeah.
Moving over terrain. Models can freely move over any terrain feature 2 inches or less in height, but models cannot move over terrain features that are 2 inches or taller. They must climb up or down.
Flying. Flying models can move over enemy models when they make a normal move, when they advance, or when they fall back. But because flying models can move over other models, now you have to measure diagonally. There is no more free movement onto the top of a ruin from the ground floor, and this is a change to the existing rule set that you can see right now. Currently, in the rules as written, monsters have to fly around buildings and can't go through them, which makes Angron really sad. Or mad. Anyway, after you have finished moving that unit, select another unit until all units have united, congratulations, you are the Warhammer 40,000. Transports. Before the game begins, you can place units inside transports with the amount of models up to that unit's transport capacity. Now, there's a new stat on transports called Firing Deck. Some transports have them, and what it is allows ranged weapons from a unit inside that tank to be shot out of that tank using the tank's profile. And what's important to remember here is they count as the tank's weapons, not the units. So buff the tank, buff the weapons on the firing deck. Embarking. A unit can embark within a friendly transport if all of its models and a normal, advance, or fallback move within 3 inches of that transport. However, you can't get out of a tank and get it back in a tank in the same phase, so you can either embark or disembark.
One major change of 10th edition is disembarking. There's 2 ways you can disembark from transports. You can disembark from a transport before the transport's moved, and you can disembark the transport after it's moved. Disembarking units must be set up wholly within 3 inches of the transport and not within engagement range of any enemy unit. If they're unable to, they cannot disembark.
Destroyed transports. If any transport is destroyed, any embarked unit must disembark. Roll 1 dice for each model that disembarks, and for each one that is rolled, that model suffers 1 mortal wound. And until the start of its controlling player's next command phase, that unit is battle shocked. That unit also counts as making a normal move and cannot declare a charge. Emergency disembarkation. If a transport model is destroyed and it is not possible to set up the unit wholly within 3 inches and not within engagement range, the unit must make an emergency disembark. They must get out quickly. That unit must be set up wholly within 6 inches instead of 3. However, you roll a dice on a 1 through 3, that unit suffers a mortal wound, and any disembarking models that cannot be set up are destroyed. What's important to understand is this is a sequence you cannot choose to emergency disembark if all factors are not met. Think of the disembark as a mortgage and the factors as your credit score. Most of you won't be able to disembark.
Reserve units start the battle in a location other than the battlefield, and they always count as making a normal move the turn they are set up. Any distance applies to horizontal distance. Any reserves units not set up by the end of the battle, i.e. turn 5, count as destroyed.
The shooting phase. You select an eligible unit, select a target, make ranged attacks, repeat to the next eligible unit.
Now, if the unit has a ranged weapon profile and hasn't advanced or fell back this turn, it may shoot this phase. Before a unit shoots, select a target, but in order to select a target, at least 1 model in that target unit must be visible to the attacking shooting model and within range of this weapon. So guys, the target needs to be visible and in range of that model. No bullet bending, unless of course we're talking about indirect, which is going to be a huge problem we'll discuss later.
When a model shoots, it makes the number of attacks equal to the weapon's attack's characteristics. We will explain heavy later. Some best practices when shooting. Resolve all attacks made with the same weapon profile before resolving attacks with different weapon profiles. Attacking player chooses which weapon shoots first. If a weapon was in range and the unit was visible when selecting that target, attacks are always made. So basically all guns are assumed to shoot at the same time for targeting purposes.
Locked in combat. Now, units cannot shoot while within engagement range of the enemy, and units cannot shoot at targets within engagement range of friendly units. One of the new rules changes is big guns never tire. It says monsters and vehicles can shoot and be shot at even while they're in engagement range of enemy units. But each time a ranged attack is made by or against such units, you're -1 to hit, unless of course you're shooting with pistols. This is a really big change to how monsters and vehicles will play in the new edition, and you can no longer be able to touch a tank and stop it from shooting that turn. Basically my entire tactic against some armies.
Making attacks. Hit rolls, both for ranged and melee. A hit is scored if the d6 result equals or exceeds the attack's ballistic skill or weapon skill. A critical hit, unmodified hit roll of 6 is always successful. An unmodified hit roll of 1 always fails. A hit roll can never be modified by more than -1 or +1.
Wound roll. With more variations in models' toughnesses, with some models having toughnesses as high as 16, we're going to rely on the following chart to determine whether the wound roll is successful or not. Guys, we're going to be wounding on 6s a lot more with these heavily armored, high toughness models coming out this edition. If the result of the wound roll is greater than or equal to the required number shown on the table, then the wound is successful. An unmodified roll of 1 always fails, and you can never modify by more than 1.
Allocating attacks. If a model in the target unit has already lost any wounds, or has any other attacks allocated this phase, the attacks must be allocated to that model.
No more spreading 30 wounds around 10 knob bikers, though that hasn't been a thing for editions.
We've still added for old people.
In order to perform a saving throw, roll 1d6 and modify it by the attack's AP. If the result is less than the save of the model being rolled for, the saving throw fails, and the model suffers damage. Otherwise, that attack is saved. An unmodified saving throw of 1 always fails. It's the wargaming equivalent of my personal relationships. A saving throw can never be improved by more than +1 or -1, much like myself.
Some models have invulnerable saves. These saves are never modified by attack's AP. The controlling player can choose to use either the model's invulnerable save or armor characteristic, not both. When a model fails the save or invulnerable save roll, that model loses a number of wounds equal to the attack damage characteristic. If a model is destroyed by an attack, any excess damage inflicted by that attack is lost.
Pretend that the dead model is in fact actually a really dead model. Mortal wounds. Some attacks inflict mortal wounds. Each mortal wound inflicts 1 point of damage to the target unit. You don't make a wound roll or a saving throw, including invulnerable saves with mortal wounds. They just happen. And unlike normal damage, excess damage from mortal wounds are not lost, allocating damage to another model in the target unit until either all the damage has been allocated or the unit is destroyed. I mean, imagine the model you killed was so dead, it made other people dead too. Now, all these rules we just talked about are inchangeable, and the only way weapons work, apart from the following 18 exceptions.
Assault can be shot even if the bearer's unit advanced.
Rapid fire. Increase the attacks by the numbered amount when targeting units within half range.
Ignores cover. The target cannot benefit from cover against these attacks. Makes sense.
Twin linked, pew pew. Each time an attack is made with such weapon, you can re-roll that wound roll.
Pistol can be shot even within engagement range, and you don't take the -1. You must target one of the enemy units in engagement range, and cannot fire alongside other non-pistol weapons, except monsters or vehicles, of course.
Torrent. Each time an attack is made with such a weapon, it automatically hits the target.
Lethal hits. Each time an attack is made with such a weapon, a critical hit automatically wounds the target. Remember, a critical is an unmodified roll of 6+.
Lance. Each time an attack is made with such a weapon, if the bearer made a charge move this turn, add 1 to the wounds roll. This is for you old world fans.
Indirect fire can target and make attacks against units that are not visible to the attacking unit. If no models are visible in the target unit when it's selected, then when making an attack against that target with indirect fire, subtract 1 from the hit roll, and the target has the benefit of cover.
Precision. If you shoot your gun at a unit and that unit has a character in it, you can target the character.
Blast. Add 1 to the attack's characteristic for every 5 models in that unit. Can never be used against a target unit within engagement range.
Melta. Increase the damage by X when targeting units within half range, and X is usually replaced by a number.
Heavy. Add 1 to the hit rolls if the bearer's unit remains stationary.
Hazardous. When a unit shoots or fights, roll 1 hazardous test for each hazardous weapon used. For each one, the model equipped with the hazardous weapon is destroyed, unless it's a character, monster, or vehicle, in which case that just really hurts, and they suffer 3 mortal wounds instead.
Ouch. Devastating wounds. A critical wound inflicts a mortal wound equal to the weapon's damage characteristic, instead of any normal damage.
Sustained hits, X. Each critical hit scores X, found on the datasheet, additional hits on the target.
Extra attacks. The bearer can make attacks with this weapon in addition to any other weapon that it makes attacks with.
Anti-X. This isn't your anti's rule. Anti-X is an unmodified wound roll of X plus against a target with a matching keyword, scores a critical wound. Charge phase. You select the eligible unit, select a target, make your charge roll, make your charge move, repeat.
A unit is eligible to charge if it's within 12 inches of one or more enemy units at the start of the charge phase. Unless that unit's advanced, that unit is within engagement range of another enemy model. That unit is an aircraft unit.
Can charge planes.
Or fell back this turn.
Charging with a unit. You must select 1 or more enemy units within 12 inches of it as the target of the charge. The target of the charge does not need to be visible by the charging unit. You make the charge roll by rolling 2 dice. The result is the maximum number of inches that each model in that unit can be moved. For the charge roll to be possible, the charge roll must be sufficient to enable the charging unit to end that move within engagement range of every unit that you selected as the target of a charge, without moving within an engagement range of any enemy units that were not the target of a charge.
And in unit coherency. Charging over terrain. Models can freely move over terrain features 2 inches or less in height. Models cannot move through terrain features taller than 2 inches, but must climb up them. Charging with flying models. Fly models can move over other models when they make a charge move. Fly models that start or end the charge move on a terrain feature measure the distance moved through the air when making their charge move.
Fight phase. Steps. Fight first. Any unit that can fight first, fights first. And then, the remaining combats, the remaining units that can fight, do so. A unit is eligible to fight if either or both of the following apply. It is within engagement range of 1 or more enemy units, or it made a charge move that turn. Charging gives you the fight first rule.
Pile in. A pile in move is up to 3 inches. Every model that moves must end closer to the closest enemy model, and in base-to-base contact with that enemy model if possible. The unit must end in unit coherency, and within engagement range of at least 1 enemy unit, and if they're unable to do so, no models can pile in.
Step 1. Pile in. Step 2. Make melee attacks. You select your weapon, select your target, make your attacks. Step 3. Consolidate.
Make melee attacks. A model can fight if it's in the engagement range of an enemy unit. Supporting attacks are only available from models that are in base contact with a model from its unit that is itself in base contact with an enemy unit. Interesting.
Big change.
Select weapons. Each model that can fight does so using its melee weapons. Each model makes a number of attacks equal to the attacks characteristic on the selected weapon.
Select targets. Select targets for all attacks before any are resolved, no finding out what happened to the first unit before you commit the rest of your attacks. An attacking model, again, must either be within engagement range of an enemy unit to target it, or in base to base with another model that's in engagement range of an enemy unit to target it.
Making attacks. Resolve all attacks against 1 unit before moving on to the next. Resolve all attacks with the same weapon profile before resolving any other different weapon profiles. All attacks declared against a target unit are resolved if no models in that unit remain within engagement range.
Consolidate. A consolidation move is a move of up to 3 inches. Every model that moves must end closer to the closest enemy model and in base-to-base contact with an enemy, if possible. A unit must end in unit coherency and within engagement range of at least one enemy unit, if possible. And if you can't do the above, then each model can move towards the closest objective marker, but this must result in the unit being within range of that objective marker and in unit coherency. If you can't do either of those things, you don't consolidate.
The 10th edition turn example.
All right, and we move to Chaos Turn 1 command phase. Abaddon uses his Paragon of Hate ability and gives reroll to hit rolls for units within 6 inches. What an aura. All these units are at starting strength, which means that nobody needs to take a battle shock test initially. So let's move forward to the Space Marines movement phase. The aggressors advance, intercessors remain stationary, and the chaplain moves up with the aggressors. Moving on to the Space Marine shooting phase, the aggressors advanced, so are unable to shoot, but the intercessors remain stationary, which means that their heavy bolt rifles will get a +1 to hit targeting the cultists on the objective. And the 5-man squad will have 10 shots, hitting on 2s and wounding on 3s, cutting right through the cultist t-shirt saves. We now fast forward a few turns, and there's not a lot left on either side. We're in the Chaos Charge phase, and Abaddon is lining up a juicy 7-inch charge on the aggressors. Can he make it? If he does, he'll be on the objective, and that'll just be sweet, sweet gravy for the Chaos player. After Abaddon piles in, he unleashes his eye-watering 8 attacks at weapon skill 2+, strength 14, AP -4, damage 3, with devastating wounds. It's gonna get wild. It's gonna be a bloodbath. Look at all those wounds at AP -4. Even though aggressors have a 2+ armor save, it's brought down to a 6+, and they're just not going to make it. In the Space Marine command phase, there's only 2 intercessors left, and because they're below half strength, they're going to have to make a battle shock test. To do this, they have to roll equal to or higher than their leadership characteristic. Wow, look at that. They rolled a natural 12, which means that they automatically pass. And they are ready to go. Thank you so much. If you've stuck through this for the whole video, if you enjoyed this video, hit the like button. If you liked our channel, go ahead and subscribe. You'll unfortunately get notifications whenever we go live, which is every Monday at 10 p.m. Eastern time. You can catch Grim After Dark, where we take a retrospect on the community and really give a good accounting of where we're at in the Warhammer community and with the Warhammer hobby as a whole in a humorous fashion. So thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.